So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to High Point Grants. If it's the first time, welcome. If it's not your first time, welcome back. We're pleased to have our program tonight. Our presenter, Julia Barnett, and her parents are here. And we got plenty of good snacks out there. If you need the restroom this evening, just talk to our staff up front. They'll buzz you into the restrooms out there. So again, we have tea, we have water, we have some of Julia's snacks from the hike. And as you can see, she's brought other stuff here. We got plenty of books up here on hiking. We have more hiking books out there. We have green trails maps that live downtown, but you can have them sent to your local branch or whatever. Come on in. Welcome, welcome. We have snacks on the table you're welcome to have. We're just starting up, so you're great. We got tea, we got brownie bites, we got brownie brittle. So welcome, welcome. My name is Ken, one of the librarians here. We have amazing staff in the back. I'm going to embarrass them and introduce them. Nate in the back, Paige from the West Seattle branch. Nate works at Delta, and Marina from our branch here. Welcome, come on in, come on in. Plenty of room. We got tea, coffee, snacks over here. And if you need the restrooms, just wait to our staff, I'll let you in. And it's your show.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Julia. I'm a senior at the downtown school. I live in West Seattle by the West Seattle branch. So I spent the summer hiking along the Pacific Crest Trail. So first of all, I want to say that I was never like an athlete or anything. I was always the slowest running in PE. I got kicked out of ballet because I was too lazy. My parents, to get me to go on hikes, they called them nature walks because I was so vehemently opposed to the concept of exercising. So if anyone here is considering doing the PCT, please know that it's not something that's like infinitely difficult. It's really manageable. When you hike all day, every day, you get really, really, really good at it. So by the end, even by like a month in, the hiking part was a piece of cake. It's really for everyone, and it's so much more of a mental thing than a physical thing. I met a 79-year-old woman. I met a 400-pound woman. I met a woman with MS. There was a 14-year-old out there hiking. I never got to meet him. But yeah, it's really for everyone. And also, if you have any questions, please interrupt me because I don't know what you want to hear about, but I want to talk about whatever you want to hear about. So yeah, please feel free to ask any questions. So I found out about the PCT through a social media post. And what really initially sparked my curiosity was just like the question of why would anyone want to do that? It sounded horrible, sleeping on the ground for 6 months, not showering, but people talk about it like it's the best experience of their life. And so I wanted to understand what it is that made the trail so magical, what it is that really made it worth it. And that curiosity, since the moment I heard about it, that just never went away. And so I just felt like I had to answer that, and to answer it, I really felt the need to live it. So that was my reason for hiking, that I just wanted to see what the big deal was. So I started, so to prepare, I packed all of my resupply boxes. I shipped them to places that I would be on trail. I trained, definitely not necessary, but just did a lot of research and preparation, and I ended up starting on May 25th. This was the earliest day that I could start, and I want to make it clear that is really late. The final day to start the PCT for an official permit is on May 31st, so May 25th is right at the tail end. I was really nervous about the desert in that heat, and that was sort of my biggest fear going into trail. And I think it was justified. It was not nice and chilly out there. So I flew down to San Diego on the 24th. My parents came with me, and they drove me to the border where the trail starts. It starts at the Mexican border and goes up to the Canadian border. It's in the border where it starts is in the small town of Campo, which is really just farmland for miles and miles. And I put my backpack on and got ready. So I started with, so I knew that filtering water was something I would have to do at some point, but it seemed like this abstract, like scary concept. So I sort of looked at the first day as just a day hike. I wanted to make it to Lake Marina, which was 20 miles in. And so I carried 7 liters of water, which is 14 pounds, because it like didn't occur to me to filter my water on the first day. I was like, oh, I'm just going for a day hike. I also brought for my food for that first 20 miles a bag of grapes. That was it, as I might on a 5-mile day hike. I also didn't put my sleeping bag in its stuff sack. I heard that it was best for the loft to keep it loose in your bag. So every time I went to get, say, a grape, I pulled my sleeping bag all the way out, laid it on the trail, fished for like a grape, and packed it back in. So I felt really silly by those 20 miles, and I learned a lot on the first day. I also started wearing the Ultra Olympus 5s for the shoes. I can talk about shoes forever and ever and ever. So if you have any questions about shoes or socks or shoe inserts, please ask me and I will happily answer, but I won't bore you guys with the technicalities. So I hiked those 20 miles. It's a challenging 20 miles. It's one of the hardest days, honestly. There are a couple really big climbs, but I thought it was beautiful, and I really enjoyed that. I met Kyo and Cami. They were actually some of the only people that I met in the first like 2 weeks, just because I started so late that it was really sparse out there in terms of other hikers. But I actually still know them both and still talk to them. So when I got to Lake Marina, I got just in time before the malt shop closed. I think that's 2 grilled cheese sandwiches, fries, onion rings, chicken wings, jalapeno poppers, mozzarella sticks, and a shake. I ate that all, except mozzarella sticks, but, and I really enjoyed that. And this was my view from inside my bivvy. So my sleep setup was that bivvy right there. It's a bug bivvy, so it has an insert that sort of props it up over my head and keeps the bugs out, more or less. And then I have a tarp that I put over that in the rain. So that's from within it. And that was instead of a tent. And then I slept on top of a sleeping pad with, I used a quilt instead of a sleeping bag actually, which I really liked. So I had a sleeping pad, a quilt, a pillow, and that was about it. So the next day, the second night, I wanted to get to Mount Laguna, which is another 23 miles. So I did a little bit of night hiking. I remember as I was night hiking toward Mount Laguna, I could see the lights of Tijuana in the desert. And that's one thing that I just loved about the desert was that it never really gets dark, even on a new moon. You can always see the lights from the nearest city just because there's nothing blocking it for hundreds of miles. So I could see Tijuana and I could see the border wall still fading away. So I got to the hostel that I was staying at in Mount Laguna at about 1 in the morning. I took this picture with my like red light on, trying not to wake everyone up. I was so scared that everyone's gonna be mad at me for waking them up and interrupting their sleep, but no one even noticed. I loved Mount Laguna. So the next morning I put on some loaner clothes. So I got out of a hiker box. So hiker boxes are these things, they're just boxes where hikers leave their gear. And ultralight gear is really nice. It's really valuable, but the reason it's valuable and expensive is because it's so light. So if it's not working for you, if you decide, you change your mind about a piece of gear, you're not going to keep carrying it. And a lot of the time, it's just not worth it to mail it home, especially for international hikers. So hiker boxes can have some real gems. This is another hiker box in Idlewild, or a set of them. So they can have some real gems. I got some lovely things out of hiker boxes. I got this shirt out of a hiker box. And so that was a fun introduction in Mount Laguna. Then I went to this French restaurant. It was just like owned by this small family. Our waiter was someone who had hiked the PCT and then hiked it again, but stopped here on day 2 because he was offered a job. His name was Goose. I loved him. And I met these guys, that's Kay and Andrew. Andrew really impressed me. I think he was on his first day. He was an ultra runner and he just crushed that 43 miles like that night and morning. So kept hiking, and the next town, I hit my 50-mile mark, which was surreal. I didn't understand how that happened on day 3. And stopped at a Scorpion with a little bit of night hiking. And the next town was Julia. So my mom she stayed in San Diego for about a week after dropping me off because she didn't want to leave her baby in the desert alone. And so she actually gave me a ride to the town of Julian. So usually how it works for resupply, for getting new food and all the things that you need, is that you'll stop at a point on trail, hitchhike or get a shuttle or something into town, east or west, and then come back to trail, where you left off. So she drove me to Julian. They had free things for PCT hikers. I felt really special. Julian loves PCT hikers because we're such a big part of the economy. So everything is very hiker friendly. People are very happy to see us. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, so I zeroed in Julian. Zeroing is when you spend 2 nights in the same place and you take a full day off. So I was having some foot pain on like my inner arch on my left foot. So I met with a physical therapist named Blaze Physio. She hiked the PCT and she works along the trail moving north with what we call the bubble of hikers. So she was super helpful. She fixed up my foot and I carried on. I climbed out of Julian. It's a big climb and hit this trail register. So I want to talk about trail registers for a minute. They are places like notebooks where you can log your name, where you're from, the date, whatever you want really, leave a little note. But they're really a safety tool. So anytime someone goes missing, they can look through trail registers to find their last known location. So I always took them really seriously as a safety tool, but it's also super fun to see if your friends are ahead of you or if they haven't come yet, and just kind of see, people's names and who's around you. So I hit my 100-mile marker. I want to warn you guys that the next picture has my nasty desert feet in it. So these are some more pictures from the desert. That was a place called Mike's Place. That was an ice cream cone that I was eating inside a horse farm, like at someone's house. And that's my foot. The desert dirt and dust is just everywhere in everything. Like we would joke, but we weren't even really joking. Like you can use it as sunscreen. A lot of the time we just wouldn't wear sunscreen in the desert because everything is so dusty. So that really got in my feet. I was having a lot of foot pain. I was still having the internal foot pain, and as soon as that got fixed up, I had extensor tendonitis, which is just another like internal foot issue, inflammation on both feet. And I had really bad outer foot pain as well. A lot of people, even like triple crowners, people who have done the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Pacific Crest Trail, would look at my feet and say like, those are the worst feet I've ever seen, you need to go to the emergency room. My feet were in really, really bad shape. So that's just one picture from, I think, day 3. And another thing that was really getting to me were the flies. So black flies can come out at the very, very tail end in the desert. They're not an issue for most hikers, but sometime around May 28th, they just came out in hordes. And that, it didn't bother most people, but they really liked my blood for some reason. And the bites, they were just horrible. The bites felt like bee stings. They left these big red welts that would itch and burn. At one point, I counted 41 welts on my right leg alone. So that was really bothering me. So that was the state of my foot. Here's a beautiful rock called Eagle Rock. And people say that the first 2 weeks are the hardest part. That's what everyone had told me. Just get through the first 2 weeks. And my personal goal was to get to Idlewild. That's a town about 163 miles in, and that's where I thought I'll be a real PCT hiker. When I get to Idlewild, I'll be, for real. I'll be the real deal. I'll start loving everything, or I'll go home. But one or the other. Like it's gonna happen in Idlewild. And I was right. So I hit Idlewild on my 2-week mark, and things started to look up from there. This was the morning before I got into Idlewild. And I just remember this, they had these giant asparagus-looking things that are like 9 feet tall, growing all around the desert. And just this morning, I just felt like I was in a Dr. Seuss book. Like everything was so colorful. The tiny little flowers were giant, like Alice in Wonderland stuff. And I got to Paradise Valley Cafe, which is, it's just sort of a landmark for PCT hikers. It's a diner that is like the entry to Idlewild. It's sort of your last stop before you get to the town of Idlewild. And I was so happy to get here. I got my food, I hung out with some of the people I had been talking with. But that was really just such a moment for me to get there and think, okay, I've made it some distance at least. So I go into Idlewild, And the mayor of Idlewild is a dog, literally, officially, a dog. His name is Mayor Max. That's Mayor Max. And this was fun. So there's a whole crowd. He comes out on Sundays. I got in on a Sunday. There's this whole crowd of people. I met some other PCT hikers. I asked someone if he wanted to share a room with me because I had like the hotel that I had purchased for the night because I didn't want to pay for it all by myself. And so we became friends. He introduced me to another guy named Joe. And we didn't know at this point, but we would all become a trail family. So I double zeroed in Idlewild. So on my first zero day, I decided to climb Mount San Jacinto. I had never climbed a mountain before or done anything like that. It's about 11,000 feet. People here have probably done much more impressive mountains, but this was very new to me. It was horrible. I got totally elevation sick. I thought it was a waste of time. I regretted doing it, but it was beautiful and I had something to be proud of. So I really enjoyed that climb. And then I came back down into the town of Idlewild. I hung out with Yonko. That's the guy who I became great friends with. This is in a library where you can like mark the mark the place wherever you're from and see where your fellow hikers are from. And Jakob and I hiked out together. So we quickly encountered some trail magic. Trail magic is this thing on trail where people who are local to the trail will just do things for hikers. It can be anything from a ride to setting up a whole like RV with fresh fruit and hot food and a place to sleep for the night. So I want to say, so when we left Idlewild, we were in a heat wave. It was no joke. Like some people were hanging behind because of it, but we had already double zeroed. It was just really, really sort of concerning. We had never been in weather so extreme. It was well over 100 degrees. And this magic had ice cubes in it. It had Gatorade. I actually talked to Yako earlier today, and he just said out of nowhere, do you remember that Gatorade we saw in the desert? Man, that stuff was like the elixir of life. And it really was. So yeah, that's the Gatorade. And we actually hit some trail magic later that day under this overpass. It was just water and trash cans, but that was wonderful. And so we went to this truck stop for some real food and that was just a nice stop. And like I said, I had been feeling really alone, really like everything was unfamiliar. I had all of these like dehydrated meals with me, but they weren't appetizing and I wasn't eating anything. And so when we got to this Starbucks, I was so happy I made Yako take a picture of me. It felt like home. I had been feeling like I was just like in some place completely foreign. I didn't recognize anything. I didn't know anybody. So I got to Starbucks and it made me really happy. I don't even like Starbucks. But, we met. Oh, so this is Big Bear. So yeah, this was the next town that we went to. This is where I got this shirt. So I want to talk about trail names for a minute. So trail names are names that you get for like just for anything that sort of happens, like an event or your personality or whatever. And my trail name was Sunflower because I wore this headband with sunflowers on it. And one of our friends, Joe, had said at one point that I was like a sunflower. So I took that trail name, and I got this shirt as well because it was in a hiker box and it had a sunflower on it. So we hit some more trail magic. This trail magic was just a trash can that someone had put there, that someone was maintaining. And that was so meaningful because we could dump out like 2 pounds of trash that had no use to us anymore. So that was the sort of thing that we just became really grateful for and excited about really quickly. Like, we saw this trash can and just like ran to it like, oh my God, what magic. So we met this guy named Drew that same day. And as Jakob and I were finishing the trail in August, about 100 days later, we saw Drew again, and we didn't actually know it at the time. We just came through and met this guy and exchanged pleasantries. Can you believe we're finishing today? This is so crazy. And as he walked away, Jakob said, like, you know who that kind of reminds me of? Drew, back from the desert. And as soon as he said that, he comes running back and says, oh my God, wait, are you Sunflower and Jakob? I think I met you guys in the desert. So that's Drew. His trail name was Dr. Danger, and that is him about 100 days apart. So I want to talk about hiker hunger as well. Hiker hunger, so, excuse me, so like I said, at first, I was really struggling to get food in. Like nothing seemed appetizing. I was overexerted all the time and I just didn't want to eat. I was too tired to eat. I didn't want any of the food I bought. And at some point, something just switched and I started being able to eat. And it got to the point where I wasn't used to eating that much, so I would be full, but I would still be so hungry because I hadn't, eaten enough yet. And so I would sit there so sad that I couldn't eat more and just wait until I was hungry enough to eat more. So that's me kind of processing the events that went down at this diner that was right off trail. So then we ran into some incredible hot springs. These are Deep Creek hot springs in the desert. It was so much fun. It's about 2 miles from the nearest road, so people would come down with coolers and fresh fruit and speakers and have a whole party. And there's freezing cold water, super hot water, everything in between. We swam around. We got in at about midnight and we left at 7 p.m. the next day. It was just a total blast. That was one of my favorite days on trail. So around this time, we really started hiking as a trail family. I just included this picture because I feel like that's really the moment where that happened. So the folks in the background here, really became the family that we hiked with for a long time. We called ourselves the Procrastinators. So we hit the McDonald's together. There is a McDonald's on trail that is so exciting and close to trail that there is an official PCT sign mentioning the McDonald's when you're about half a mile away from it. We hiked to that McDonald's, got some food, and kept hiking. So the next mountain that we hit was Mount Baden-Powell. This one was a piece of cake compared to San Jacinto. I really enjoyed it. We got the beautiful sunset. Yeah, that was a fun climb. And the next day, we had to reroute because of an endangered frog population. So the trail was closed to protect this frog species. So we went through a tunnel, Yako climbed up on top of it. We were a little bit scared of getting hit by cars. We had that little bit to walk on, but that was a fun experience. And the next, or sometime that week, we hit Basque National Park, which was, it's just these rock formations, but I really loved it. It really felt like we were in the desert. When you hear desert, I don't know what you picture, but a lot of the trail is sort of high desert, and it's just not, it's not like the sort of canyons and rocks that you might see in Utah. But this national park is like a little piece of that. It was just gorgeous. So we hit 500 miles, and just after that, that landmark, we got to Hikertown. So Hikertown is right on trail, and then we hitchhiked east to go to Weevil Supermarket, which is the closest thing to a town for miles out there. This is right at the base, or the start of the Mojave Desert. So this is really the only thing around. And it was at this point that we started to talk about what we were going to do to deal with the aqueduct. I'll also give you people's trail names, or just names. So that's Joe, that's Cold Snap, that's Jailbait, that's Cody, me, Sunflower, and Yako.
So, I'm sorry, you said you were before the Mojave Desert, that's right at that green sticker on there, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So right there, so that would be Hikertown that we were there. And so we were talking about how we're going to approach this because it's one of the most dangerous sections of trail. It goes along the Los Angeles Aqueduct, which brings the water down from the Sierra Nevadas to the city of Los Angeles. And we hike actually on top of the aqueduct for about 20 miles. And then the next 20 miles are really steep up and down, really exposed, and there's almost no water for that section. So we were trying to think of how we were going to approach this, what our sort of strategy was going to be. This late in the desert was, it was actually dangerous. 2 people died there this year. So at some point it came up that we could do the 24-hour challenge, which earlier folks will do for fun, but we were kind of looking at it out of necessity. We were thinking the safest way to get through might be to do it in under 24 hours and really just get to Tehachapi, which was the next town, without having to go through, even potentially a full afternoon, really the hottest part of the day. So we decided to do the 24-hour challenge and set out. This is in Hikertown. Oh, and that's produce. How could I forget him? So it was an absolute blast. So we hitchbacked a trail. I just love that picture. It did feel like the end of everything remotely civilization-y. And hiked. And it was a beautiful night. It was incredible. We just had a blast. We sang songs. We did things like say your favorite thing about everyone in the group. What's a poem everybody should read? Watched the sunset. Watched a rocket launch, actually. And that gave way to the next morning. So we hiked all through the night. The coldest part of that 24 hours was 5:30 in the morning when it was 93 degrees. And the next morning was one of the worst days on trail. We were exhausted. We were still hiking. We had like 20 more miles of straight up and down to do. And it was hotter now. So we kept hiking. We eventually made it to Tehachapi. And they did not have loaner clothes for me, so I wore my tent. That's the tarp that goes over the bivvy. And so Tehachapi is where people plan their resupply strategy for the Sierra Nevadas. I was skipping the Sierras because I had to get back to school in time. And I initially didn't feel super prepared to tackle those conditions, but I realized at this point I definitely could have. But I just had to get back to school in time, so I planned to leave my trail family. So I was resupplying only for the next 7 days to get to Kennedy Meadows, but everyone else was planning this whole strategy, complicated resupply situation to get through the Sierras. So we went to a Walmart. Here's my shopping cart if you're curious. That was his resupply for the Sierras. And hiked out of Tehachapi. We did hike through the largest windmill farm in the country, which has led me to really, really, really despise windmills. The largest windmill farm in the country is really big. So they just wouldn't leave us alone. We kept thinking we were done, and then we'd hike into another field of windmills. So we finally made it to Kennedy Meadows. This is a really special place on trail. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Wild, but it's definitely featured there. And it's really where you end the desert, you recuperate, recover, spend a few days relaxing usually. There's a pool, and then get ready for the Sierras, which everyone is often really excited for. My friend Shirley here, that was his trail name, drank a gallon of Pepsi, a full, we calculated it was a full gallon. Yeah, we just hung out. But I knew that I would be leaving my trail family soon. So and here are just some Kennedy Meadows activities. We've got packing the bear canister, which is a classic to carry it through the Sierras. He found that in a hiker box that really matched his shorts. We were weighing our backpacks. But I knew I would be leaving my trail family. So I was really sad the whole time, saying goodbye to them. That was the breakfast. The pancakes are as big as they look. They'll give you as many as you want. No one gets more than one, they're that big. And this is Triple Crown Outfitters. It's run by a Triple Crowner. That's the 3 long trails in America, the 3 Mexico-Canada-ish trails. And Triple Crown Outfitters is just hiker heaven. It has everything you could possibly want. Amazing. It's this amazing little store in a shipping container, I think. But yeah, so that night I had to say goodbye. It was 4th of July. There was music. We were really just hanging out in this bar that was also the place we were staying, a campground, and I was just crying the whole time. That's Sleeping Beauty. And everyone was pretty bummed out. So we were sort of worried that this would be where the trail family fell apart. Shirley was staying behind to wait for some packages. Cold Snap had an injury. The other folks wanted to keep moving really fast. Yako was sad about me leaving, and he wanted to stay back for a minute and not set out alone. So it was kind of a sad moment. It actually ended up that the trail family did not fall apart here, luckily, but we all had a moment there. And my mom picked me up and drove me north to start the trail again, and I was crying the whole car out there. But we stopped in Sacramento. That was wonderful. I got to say hi to my grandparents. I went to Sunflower Drive-In, which is one of my favorite restaurants in the world, and it was my trail name, and I have been talking about it nonstop on trail. So I got to get that burger, that vegan burger. It was amazing. And when I started out hiking alone this time, alone for the second time, I was hiking straight toward Mount Shasta, and it was just this incredible view. Unfortunately, I was also hiking straight into the wildfires. This was a really bad wildfire season. So the next night after this was one of my scariest nights on trail. We saw the flames from a wildfire. I saw tons of rattlesnakes, scorpions, and I actually had an encounter with a mountain lion. I was hiking alone in the middle of the night, and you're not supposed to do that really, but and I saw these eyes looking at me on trail about 25 feet away just when I rounded a turn. It was behaving aggressively. It wouldn't leave when I shouted and yelled and whistled. I ended up going back and getting another hiker, woke her up, went out there together. We threw things at it. It still wouldn't leave. So we just went back and went to sleep. Went out the next morning. It was fine. We had to hike into town because of some fire closures. And when we got into town, so also the mosquitoes here were really bad. We hiked straight into this swarm of mosquitoes, all those mosquito bites on my face. And this was just a really sucky couple of nights. I felt like everything was trying to kill me. There was the fires, the rattlesnakes, the scorpions, the mosquitoes, the mountain lion, and I just regretted leaving my trail family. And I regretted that for a really long time. But we went into town to avoid some fire closures. This guy gave us, he was a wonderful trail angel and gave us a ride. And we actually had to leave that town that we got into. It was evacuated. So while we were there for the night, the town got evacuated, more of the trail closed, and I ended up getting evacuating north to Sayad Valley, the next town. Stayed with these folks at a wonderful cabin, and they were, that guy is a YouTuber. I'm blanking on his name, but he, this was his third year in this very section, trying to be able to finish his complete through hike. But every year, he went earlier, and every year it was on fire. So he was not having a great time either. So setting out on trail again out of Sayad Valley, I met Miss Elegant. She was the 79-year-old woman I was talking about. And we hit some real burn zones. So those are what we call widowmakers because of their tendency to fall over in wind or just on unstable ground. Yeah. So that was beautiful. So the next, this was a cabin that was just on trail, just right on trail. I got to sleep in it. It protected me from the mosquitoes for a night. I really enjoyed that. And then I hit the Oregon-California border. More than half of the trail is in California, so it can feel like you are in California for a really, really long time. And the next town that I was going to, I got a hitch in the bed of a truck. And this was a wonderful ride. It was one of my favorite experiences. It was like 20, 30 minutes down a mountain, just down this windy forest road in the truck with the wind in my hair. I was just having a blast. Oh, foot picture, sorry guys. My feet were still recovering from what the desert had done to them. They were a lot better at this point. This was definitely like through the healing process, but this was my heel. Yeah. It was bad. These are not the worst pictures, but they did heal up. Again, I would be more than happy to talk about my shoe setup that I got figured out, but I got it sorted out by the end. So I met in the town of Ashland. This was a person who gave us a ride, and that was Turtle. Well, Chaos Turtle was his full trail name, and he was kind of like my trail ship boyfriend on trail. We hiked together occasionally, and then I hiked out to, I just love these pictures. And then we hiked out to Crater Lake National Park. And I met this woman named Molly. I actually just came up to her and asked her for a ride around the national park to get to where I was staying for the night. And she was like, oh, you're hiking the PCT? And I was like, yeah, totally. And she thought it was super cool. And she said, do you think I could do that? And I was like, hey, anyone can do that. And she said, okay, and parked her car and started hiking with me. And so we hiked Crater Lake together. Those are my friends Helene and Clement. And the four of us did Crater Lake. Another thing about the time that I joined, the time that I jumped back on trail, was it was right in the middle of the butterfly migration. There was a moment in the desert, just a few days, where there were tons of caterpillars everywhere. We couldn't sit down on trail because we would crush hundreds of caterpillars. Everything you could see was covered by caterpillars. And then when I started hiking again up north, I realized what that was all about. We were just walking through fields and fields of butterflies. So I cannot overstate how many lakes there are in Oregon. There are so many lakes along trail. So I could not show you all the pictures or we'd be here forever and ever. But this is one of the lakes. This is Elk Lake. I got to go kayaking and just had a wonderful morning there. One random thing that I also remember about that morning was that a lot of people were talking about proposals. A lot of guys on trail picked this area to propose to their girlfriends, which I thought was really exciting, and I loved getting to be there and seeing that. So this was some trail magic that we hit on our way into Bend. It was some of the best trail magic ever. I mean, cherry tomatoes, like, I was so happy, I was so happy. And then we got to Bend, Oregon. This was wonderful. I met some people who were around my age, which was super rare. I'm 17, and most people out there, I mean, it's really people of all ages, but meeting someone my age was rare. So I met a couple who were, just around my age, and so that was wonderful. And we went to this like mini bluegrass festival here. I was actually in Bend during Farewell Fest, which is a big music festival that I've gone to before. I love the music there. So everyone was in town for that festival, which was super fun. We had things in common. We got to talk about the music we like. And then there was this little like dinner mini bluegrass event. And we just had so much fun. Ate tons of food, went dancing. I was wearing girls' shorts and my bandana as clothing while I did laundry. And then I hiked out for a few nights with Turtle's trail family. They called themselves the Sardines because they camped so packed in together. So this was their tent setup, and I camped with them that night. And that's, his name was Zoo, I think, he's fishing. Oregon was really beautiful. This is the biggest burn scar along the Pacific Crest Trail. It's left over from the Dixie Fire a few years back, and that was just a long, long time to be walking through burn zone. That's what happens when me and Turtle hit a town on just a little store right on trail, a convenience store. Turtle always carried, I think it was a 2.7 pound bag of peanut M&Ms. I thought they had frozen Capri Suns. That was amazing. If you guys are ever doing trail magic, frozen Capri Suns. So I just got a bunch of those. I think I ate 4 of those donuts. We had a great time there. Oh yeah, I really enjoyed this. That was just about half a mile later. And this is my first campfire on trail. It was so hot in the desert that it never made sense to have a campfire. And then there was such a fire risk in the really dry sections. So this was my first chance to have a fire. So I had that with the Sardines. If you're interested in trail names, that was Ramsey, Taps, Smiles, don't know hers, Marg, and Zoo, short for Zookeeper. And the next, here's where that was then. They've got those PCT bag tags. If you start more with the bubbles, sometimes rangers will give you bag tags that just indicate that you're hiking the PCT this year. And then we were almost to Timberline Lodge. So Timberline Lodge is supposed to be the best meal on trail. Their lunch buffet is supposed to be the best meal out of the whole trail. I really like food. All hikers really like food. And so I'm not sure really what I was thinking, but I was like, okay, I really want to make it to this lunch buffet. We're 20 miles away. So we decided to wake up at 4 in the morning, hike those 20 miles, eat like nothing, so that we were nice and hungry for the buffet, and so that we could hike fast enough without stopping to cook. So we made it in time for the Timberline Lodge lunch buffet. I had hiked 20 miles, including a climb. Oh yeah.
At this point, how long have you already hiked? How much of you need to help?
Ooh, so I think that's a great question. I think I was at Timberline Lodge. This is right in the north of Oregon. Just right. Yeah. Oh yeah. So that was July 29th, or maybe a little bit after. So I had about a month before I needed to get home. A little bit more than a month, and I had been hiking since May 25th. So So about 2 months, and I had 1 month left. And so, yeah, so we made it in time for the Timberline Lodge lunch buffet. I had eaten when we got there. I hiked 20 miles, climbed up this giant hill of sand for whatever reason outside Mount Hood, that's sort of just below it, and eaten a Celsius powdered energy drink and berries that we picked along the way. But this was prime berry season, so that was lots of sustenance and very enjoyable. So we made it to Timberline Lodge, stayed there for a night in a fancy hotel room and had a wonderful time. I just love Timberline Lodge. It was just beautiful. Hot tubs, pools. They have the axe from the movie The Shining, if you've seen that, so we got to hold the axe. And then I hiked out. It was really, really rainy around this point. That's some bread that I stole from the buffet. We actually ate until we got kicked out. And then I went back to tip them extra because I felt really bad. But so that was my bread. That was another night that was just really cold. And then I made it to the border of Washington. So this is just before the border. This is technically an alternate, but it's a really popular alternate.
Did you change like your clothing in terms of like how much you were taking, like, and you did that when and how?
So I should have. I didn't really. I wore the same shirt the whole time. Yeah, it's just that white shirt. And I did get this sort of fleece around. That was when I left the desert. I ordered that fleece. I actually started with the fleece, but I didn't like it, and I also was never wearing it, so I sent it home. And then I got this one when I left the desert. This one didn't do anything for me. It was really, it was like a nice mid-layer, but what I needed was an outer layer, even like a puffy jacket. And I just never had that. It's so hard to ship things there that you pretty much, it's all luck if you're able to get something or not. So that was, that's a Mountain Hardwear air mesh fleece. I wish that I had gone, the more popular decision is like a Senchi, which is just another kind of fleece that's a bit warmer. So I switched out and wore that, or I added that in addition to my shirt. But that was really about all I did. For the whole time I wore shorts, mostly while hiking, and I also had like 32-degree base layer pants. But yeah, I definitely could have gone warmer. If I did it again, I would at least go with the Senchi, but I would probably bring a puffy jacket. I loved my bivvy in the desert. I really loved it. You could see the stars every night. It was super easy to set up. But I would have liked to have a real tent in the rain. So this is an alternate technically to the PCT, but almost everyone does it because it has some incredible waterfalls, including one that you can walk under. And this was actually required at the time that I was there because the real trail was closed for a fire. And that was just a fabulous mushroom. I love mushrooms and I forage a lot, and so I think that was all turkey tail. And it was a rock it's like taller than this chair that was just full of turkey tail mushrooms. And then I hit Bridge of the Gods. So that is the connection between Oregon and Washington over, I want to say over the Columbia River. And you hike across it. It's one of the sort of scarier moments on trail. I think I read somewhere that car crash is the most common cause of death on the PCT. So I was definitely thinking that as I walked across. But it's just a beautiful, beautiful scene. It's nice and long. It takes a good time to walk across. And I just felt like I was coming home. And we were actually greeted with some trail magic on the other side. It was just an apple. And he was like, welcome to Washington. Here's an apple. So I felt like I had made it home. That I liked. And then I made it to Trout Lake. So Trout Lake was under a level 2 evacuation when I got there. And it was really, really close to the fire. The fire was just, there was this huge, huge fire. I'd actually seen it start. I saw lightning strike and I knew there would be a fire. And when I woke up in the morning, there was a fire. And it grew really, really rapidly. It became one of the biggest, I think it was the biggest fire on trail. This was sort of at night, like this is dark. It should be dark in this picture, but it is not because the fire is so close. Everyone was really freaking out. Trout Lake is a really small town. For context, to get there from Seattle, you drive through Portland. It's in Washington, but you drive through Portland and then drive east on 4 service roads to get there. It takes about 5 hours to get there from here. And pretty much everyone had evacuated by the time we got there. There were a lot of hikers there. Because of all the fires, we were already very concentrated in one place, like just sort of a bubble of hikers, way more than should ever be in one place at once, honestly. And everyone had pretty much already evacuated. There weren't any emergency services to get us out, and people were really scared that they were gonna honestly burn up there. This was my scariest night on trail. I remember it was dark out, sort of dark as it could be. People were wearing masks and bandanas to cover their face. And everyone had packed up their tents. They had set their tents up for the night and then packed them up and were just standing on this Forest Service road with their thumbs out hitching, with all their belongings on their back, waiting for someone to drive by, and nobody was driving by because like 200 people, maybe 400 people live in Trout Lake. So I actually ended up calling my parents. The way that most people got out was that the store that we were staying at was calling all of the residents they had the phone numbers of, and saying, if anyone has cars, please get these hikers out. And so someone with a bus and then someone with a van, like a sort of converted school bus, came down and drove people to a nearby town. And my parents drove me out and evacuated me far away because I was still worried that the neighboring town would burn up as well. So my parents drove me. It was the middle of the night, right? So they didn't want to drive me all the way back to trail. It's hard to get to. You'd have to go really far east again on Forest Service roads. So they dropped me off in Kalama, Washington, right off I-5, 100 miles west of the PCT, and said, "Oh, you're tough. You'll probably get back to trail. Good luck." So they had to go to work the next morning. I can't blame them. I had a lovely day at the Kalama McMinimans, got some room service. I got to see the real ocean for the first time. Common misconception, but the PCT is not the Pacific Coast Trail. So I was seeing the ocean for the first time. But I had to find my way back to trail. The hitchhiking was impossible. I would have had to hitchhike on I-5. There weren't any like truck stops nearby that I could walk to. So I ended up calling a private, there was no Uber, of course, so I ended up calling a private taxi company, and they drove me like 3 hours to the trail. And then the next section is Goat Rocks. This is a really beautiful, just a really incredible section. It was, yeah, these are all the goats, so all goats. Oh my god, I just love this section. And it's on something called the Knife's Edge. So this, you actually walk on this. Like this right here is the trail. It's terrifying and beautiful and just amazing. This was my favorite sunset on trail, so I thought we could just watch the sunset here. That's a good view of really where the trail is. And this is in the morning. And that was also, I think, my best view of the Milky Way as well. You got that a lot in the desert, but this was in Washington. It was the first time in a while that I had just seen totally the Milky Way with nothing to block it. We definitely didn't climb the ski lift. And then we did some more trail magic. This is wonderful. Yeah, really, really nice notes. 2,300 miles. And, oh yeah, this is Chinook Pass. It's accessible by car. You can go there, camp there. It's beautiful. Except the mouse ate through my bivvy. So that's not the bivvy that I actually used on trail. This is a new one. I threw away the one I used. At one point, actually right here, I slept in the parking lot, my fault, and a mouse came through and like bit through the bivvy and then got stuck in the bivvy because it's long and narrow and just ran like laps up and down my body, and I woke up to it on top of my face. So maybe I don't recommend this spot, but it was beautiful. And then I day hiked the enchantments. So I zeroed around this area and got to hike the enchantments in Washington. They're not on the trail, but it was a really beautiful, beautiful piece of land. And then this is the Washington Athletic Club room. Like I said, or this is the women's room there. Like I said, we were really concentrated in a bubble. I think there were at least 50 people here when their capacity is really more like 20, 25. And we were just, definitely the fires made it a challenging thing to not overwhelm all the towns we went through. So yeah, this is the women's room, totally packed up. That's my backpack there, trekking poles. Yeah. So I wanted to go, so these are some folks that I hitchhiked with. So I wanted to go to PCT days, or Trail Days, which is a big festival for PCT hikers, just for hikers really, in Cascade Locks in Oregon. So I went to Leavenworth, which is where I was at the time on trail, and then I got a hitchhike with these folks back to my house, where I picked up my car and then drove to PCT Days to meet up with the trail. It's a wonderful place where you can meet up with all of your old friends from earlier, just meet people, buy some gear where there's no sales tax. And so yeah, so these guys were also right around my age, which was always rare, and we really hit it off. So I invited them to my house, and then we went to Bakery Nouveau and hung out. And then this is PCT Days. Yako's back. I got to meet the whole trail family. They were all still together, to everyone's surprise, and we just had such a blast. Selling gear, trying out gear. And PCT Days was unfortunately where the procrastinators trail family really fell apart. The fires were so bad in Washington at this point. I had already hiked most of Washington, but they were still far behind me, being that they did the Sierras and also that they're the procrastinators. At this point, I think more than half of Washington was closed because of fires. It was a really bad year. And most people just didn't want to try and figure out how they were going to hitchhike into these tiny towns and avoid fires and not get stuck as more fires were happening. And a lot of them were actually asking my advice, like, hey, Julia, do you think it's worth it to do Washington right now? And as much as I wanted them to see the beautiful sights that I saw, I really had to say, like, I think we should all come back another year. Like, Washington was just so bad with navigating it, and the fact that every night there would be a lightning storm, and I knew that in the morning there would be a new fire, and it was always just felt like a gamble if I'd be able to get out before that fire reached me. So Joe went home to, visit his parents for a while in Idaho. Produce and Yako stayed on the trail. Jason went home, or Shirley went home. It really, the trail family fell apart, so, but Yako came back with me and hiked the border. So I drove back to, actually to the next section that was available to hike, which was the last 30 miles to the border. So we almost made it. And we hit the border on August 1st. I finished with Yakov. I also happened to finish the same day as Turtle and the Sardines. And that was my Terminus picture. But the story's not over. So my parents sent me that. That was really cute. I had like a satellite communication device, and they sent me that text. I think it cost like 50 cents to send a message, so I felt very loved. And this was my mom's picture when she picked me up off the train from Vancouver. So you hike into Canada to finish the trail. You finish at the border, hike into Canada, and then I took the train back. But since then, Yakov and I went to Idaho to hang out with Joe for a little while, went hiking there. We hung out with Devin as well. He was another one of the procrastinators on trail. My parents have been hosting hikers in our house if they're flying out of SeaTac. So we've met a ton of, especially international hikers, and had them stay at our home. That's my mom dropping some guys off at the airport. I went to Portland to go to a concert with Yakov. At this point, he actually decided to drive up with me for a second time and finish at the border with this girl. So he's done that section, I think, 4 times now. I also went to Yakov's hometown in New Jersey to help him basically move out of his parents' house. And I went to Leavenworth with the trail family. We met up with Produce while he was still on trail, and his trail family, and all had fun in Leavenworth. I went to a Kraken game with Etienne. My friend Brittany visited me before flying to Australia. And yeah, thank you guys so much.
Yes. I hear about your sandals.
God, yeah.
Like maybe some of the gear you talked about, like what did you like actually feel the water? What was like your biggest like, oh my god, I can't live without, and I don't know. The sandals are definitely pretty silly.
Yeah, so I'd love to talk about that. So these are Mayfly Imago sandals. They weigh 0.59 ounces for a whole very welcome to hold them. They're pretty big. Yeah. But yeah, so I did not make them. I bought them. And that was maybe the most embarrassing part of the trail for me was that everyone, I actually just hung them off the back of my backpack. So I tied a rubber band to this and then I loop it through that and just hung them in. So everyone would see that and say, dude, your sandals are so cool. How'd you make those? And I would say, I didn't make them. I paid $49 US for them. If you're worried that they're too heavy, they do have a lighter version. And
I saw people with T-gloves and all that, were you like, okay, I didn't need that?
so I was full on ultralight. Like that is a really ultralight backpack, very minimalist. My bivy, my poles, everything I had was as light as I could make it. I just took that seriously. So, I mean, these are stupid. They're really stupid. My friends insisted that I was doing more damage to my feet than I would have done by carrying extra weight. And I would use them again. I do plan to thru-hike again, and I would use them again. Also, I went through 3 pairs over the course of the trail, so they did not last because they're made out of cardboard. They work for something, so they're great if I'm like swimming and I just want to let my feet dry off. They're great if I just get to like a nice, soft, sandy camp and I want to take my shoes off. They are not great for walking around towns. So like, you always want to take your hiking shoes off when you get to town, like say like Portland. I went to Portland because that's kind of a trail town. These are not great for that. They hurt. I was scared of needles. Like for walking on gravel, they really, really hurt because like rocks will get stuck in there. So it depends what you're using them for. I think I would use them again, but I would be more judicious about when I use them to protect my feet. How do I filter water? So this one I'm kind of an outlier. So the vast majority of people on trail use a water filtration device. Some people will carry chemical treatment as a backup, but most people use the Platypus Quick Draw. No, not the Platypus Quick Draw. Sawyer Squeeze. Most people use the Sawyer Squeeze. The Platypus Quick Draw is another slightly heavier option. It's way better. It's definitely worth the wait in my opinion. I bought that actually right after trail. I bought it for myself. But almost everyone uses a Sawyer Squeeze and a Canot. So they'll carry this, screw on this, like fill up water, like, anyway, fill up water like that, it opens, and then like tie it on, sort of screw onto a Sawyer Squeeze and then squeeze into the bottle. But I used chemical treatment. Oh, I think the reason I did that was, right, because I'm lazy, but also because it kills norovirus, which filtration does not. And I really, really like this. So it was great in the desert because water is so scarce that you're filtering it you're not filtering very often. You're filtering maybe once or twice per day, just because you get maybe 1 or 2 water sources per day. So this was great then. You mix it together, wait 5 minutes, and then you put it into, like, it's part A, part B. You mix it together, wait 5 minutes, and then add it to your water and wait 30 minutes before you can drink it. It's also lighter than a filter. And then in Oregon, there are so many water sources. Like I said, more lakes than I can count. Just so many like waterfalls and beautiful sources that I felt kind of silly having to like wait all the time because it wasn't really worth it to, like, I would only filter still a couple times a day when I didn't have to be carrying that much water. So I ended up ordering a Platypus mini quick draw, which is like, a mini Sawyer Squeeze, which is like their smaller version. And I hated it. I was too lazy. I just wanted to put the drops in my water and let it sit there. So even when I had a filter, I continued using this pretty much exclusively. I was actually the only person I met who exclusively used Aquamira. Yeah, it's called Aquamira water treatment. I highly recommend it. Honestly, I think it's safer than filter because it gets out norovirus. You know it's going to do its job. It's bleach-based, I think. Some things really do leave a taste, like iodine tablets leave a taste. That does not, in my opinion. Sometimes I get like a slight lemony bleach taste, but that was really rare. And often that was a sign like, oh, maybe I put in 1 too many drops and then I dump it and redo it. Yeah, so that's what I used. I was definitely an outlier in that, but I loved it. Although for the Appalachian Trail, which I am planning to do, I'm going to stick with a filter just because there are so many water sources that I don't need to be waiting 30 minutes all the time. Here, so I also was an outlier in that I only used platypuses, they're sort of like canots, but they're like water bladders. So I put a platypus in both both sides of this, and then looped it through my load lifters, and then had it hanging down in front of me. I love that. I would totally do it again. However, the platypuses are not durable at all, and they broke all the time. And then I didn't have any water when they broke. So what I would do next time is get 2 of these, probably one in a smaller size and one that is 2 liters. And then it's even easier to fill up because I can just open it and do like a big swoop. And then put that directly in there, it does fit, and then have the platypus cord on top and just like suck out of it. So that's what I would do. What else? My sleeping bag was a Z-Pack's 10-degree quilt. It was 10-degree comfort, so more like a 0-degree quilt. It was, I want to say 950, maybe 850 fill, goose down. I loved it. I really, really loved it. Yeah, that was really, really warm. And I also used Thermarest X-Therm, which is a 7.2 R value, which is like the rating for how warm a sleeping pad is, how insulated it is. So I had a really warm setup, but I loved it. I sleep really cold. Most people that I met had like a 20-degree survival, so more like a 30-degree quilt. But I loved my 10-degree. I loved my Thermarest. If you buy from REI, my Thermarest did pop, and I just returned it and got another one. So I had bought it within a year. What else? Oh, this is my poop bag. So I have my travel and bidet and everything. What other gear? I swapped out my pillow partway through and got a down-filled pillow instead of an inflatable one. I wasn't super happy with either. I would probably get a new pillow next time. I used down mittens. I think for a colder hike, like for the Appalachian Trail, I want to get a down hoodie and down boots as well. For electronics, I started out not with nearly enough charge, and I had to fix my system. But I ended with 2 10,000 megawatts per hour, or mega amps or something, so 20,000 total, whatever that unit is, night core power banks. That was more than I needed, but I really enjoyed having that peace of mind. I used my AirPods, a night core headlamp, I think it was their NU25, and then just a really fast USB-C charger. Yeah, I think that was most of my electronics. Any other gear that you're curious about?
What are your shoes?
My shoes, thank you for asking. Okay, so I started out with I tested out a lot of shoes before the trail, but I usually wear, so my everyday wear is the Ultra Lone Peaks. They're by far the most popular shoes on trail. So I started out with the Ultra Lone Peaks, but I noticed that when I was still training for the trail, but I noticed that on elevation my feet slipped a lot. So I ended up starting the trail with Ultra Olympus 5s. These were wonderful, I do love them, but I was having, this is my first pair, but I was having a lot of internal foot pain, like I said, and part of that was along the arch from a lack of arch support, but also part of that was just because there wasn't quite enough cushioning. So I went to REI when my mom picked me up from Kennedy Meadows and said basically like, I'm through hiking, I need Olympuses, I need something like this with more cushioning. So what are your most cushioned zero drop shoes? And he said, okay, the most cushioned zero drop shoes in the world are Ultra Olympuses, you're using them. But he said that they had just come out with the Olympus 6s. So these had like a millimeter more cushioning. They're what I'm wearing right now. And these changed everything. I also got arch insoles as soon as the physical therapist said I was like good, gave me the green light on that. So I got highly supportive arch support insoles that were also pretty thick. Those were zero drop as well. And then I got the Olympus 6s, just made all the difference, and I stopped having foot pain. And the other foot pain that I was having was just from the impact every day. It would actually like bring me to tears around like mile 14. I call it like my mile 14 foot pain. It would just be like just how much it hurt from the overall impact. And yeah, these just made all the difference, that 1 more millimeter cushioning when they switched from the 5s to the 6s. My shoes were zero drop. Zero drop shoes are when, so zero drop shoes are that there's no drop between the heel and the toe. Some people really swear by them. Some people use them because they think they're more like authentic, because they're like more like natural, since it's similar to a barefoot gait. And that's not why I use them. I don't use them to be natural or like similar to, you know, the way we used to be or anything. I use them because they essentially keep everything in alignment. If there is a drop that's more than, I mean, any drop is like walking on really tiny high heels. And to me, that means that you're hurting your hips, your knees, yeah, really just your hips and your knees and your joints, because that's not really how we're meant to walk. So it's nothing about cushioning. Like most zero drop shoes that you'll find are nearly barefoot shoes because people want to be like natural and close to earth and everything. That's not me. I just want zero drop, but I don't care if I'm walking on giant platforms. I want cushioning as well. So that's why I love the Olympus 6s. I use the Sole, which are zero drop insoles, Sole wide performance insoles. Oh yeah, most people use Ultras. Like I said, most people use the Lone Peaks, but Ultras are really popular for thru hikers because they are zero drop for the most part, and they're a super wide toe box, so your shoes really expand on trail. So Ultras, I just always recommend them, wide toe box, and zero drop, so great for thru hikers. And you're recommended to change out your shoes every 500 miles. I found that you can really feel when you start to need to wear them, when you start to wear them out, and when you need to replace them. And I found that with Ultras, they're just not like the best quality. They do degrade pretty quickly. So I found that that was about 200 to 300 miles. You can really just feel a change in your gait and how you're walking. Also, for my blisters, for the external foot pain, I added liner socks. So in Gingy toe socks, wool toe socks, those absorb heat, absorb the smell, and go in between the toes, and those saved my feet from the horrible, horrible blisters that I had. I had been using Leukotape in the desert to cushion where the blisters were, not to cushion, but just to prevent further blisters, and I developed an allergy to that because I had been using them so much. So my solution, when I got everything figured out, was Ultra Olympus 6s, Sole insole, Injinji wool liners, and then Darta socks. Any other questions?
Anybody, any other questions? You guys all ready to go hiking?
I have a question for you. So when you started, it was like a 20-mile first day. Had you hiked 20-mile hikes before? Like, do you have experience doing hikes that were that long, or was it like this kind of your first time doing 20 miles a day?
Definitely my first time. Thank you guys so much. Definitely my first time. I had done, I think my longest was a 14-mile hike. And yeah, people say to start slow. I really didn't heed that advice, but people also say if you're starting that late, you have to go fast so that just to get sort of on track. So I was sort of only heeding that bit of advice. Yeah, I had never done anything like that. I had done really limited backpacking. The longest backpacking trip I had done was 3 nights, but that was when you stayed in one place. That wasn't even a thru hike. And the longest single distance I had done was 1 night. And those were pretty much all with my summer camp. So yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, but it turns out I like it. I didn't even know if I would like backpacking, but I do. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming.